Hello and welcome to another episode of Shuffling Notes. I'm your co-host Prankit,
And I'm your co host, Razi.
and today we are going to discuss one of my absolute favorites, the soundtrack to Man of Steel by Hans Zimmer. I think this one has been a long time coming, right, Rezi?
I mean, I guess I was just waiting to listen to it on repeat, as if I didn't before, but
Yeah.
you know, just to make notes and just
Yeah, just an
talk about it.
amazing soundtrack. I think this time the way I've
Yeah,
listened to it is a bit different to how I've always listened to it in the past. And I guess we'll get
yeah,
to it. But there's a bit of
yeah.
backstory to sort of how Hans got around to doing the track.
Hmm.
Basically, at the time, Hans Zimmer was scoring The Dark Knight Rises, and
Hmm.
the Chris Nolan was the one who was like pitching the movie to Warner Brothers at the time, and he was
Right.
bringing sort of Zach in as part of that vision. And these rumors started swirling around that it will be Hans Zimmer who's going to score the track. And some journalists actually asked him that during some sort of party or event, and Hans said no. But I don't know how, like, the guy misheard it or something, and they sort of went with it, that this headline everywhere that Hans Zimmer is going to do the new Superman theme.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
basically, when Hans saw that, the first thing he did was like he had to get Zach's number and call him up. He had never spoken to Zach before, and he was like, "I'm really
Hmm.
sorry, like I told the guy that I'm not actually doing this." And Zach was like, "Oh, good thing you called me. I'm actually listening to some of your stuff. I'd like to talk to you about this movie." And it took a lot of convincing to get Hans on board. He was very,
Yeah.
yeah, especially you have to live up to that sort of John Williams original score. And I guess, going up against that, I guess Hans, he was feeling a bit nervous about it. And it took a lot of convincing from Christopher Nolan. And from what I remember, like he agreed to do it only on the condition that no one mentions the name Superman to him until he's done with The Dark Knight Rises. So yeah,
Right.
it was quite
Okay.
a sort of long process to
Yeah.
how they got Hans, but I'm glad they did. What were your sort of first impressions of the score? Was it when you watched the movie, or had you heard it before the movie when you went to see it?
I think so. When the movie came out, I think
Yeah.
it wasn't really at the time for streaming services to be a usual thing.
Hmm.
So I think watching the movie and then getting to the soundtrack of Flight
Yeah.
on YouTube or wherever it
Yeah.
was, and that's so. I just named it. Flight is what
Yeah.
is just. I
Hmm.
mean, it just drives you to the album and it
Yeah.
drives you to the story.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And I guess,
And
the way, like for me, for example, I think from what I remember, they had released either a track or a sample of a track online on some website before the movie was, or before I went to see it in the cinemas. And so I did
okay.
have a listen beforehand. And,
Hmm.
I thought it was interesting, but I think at least because it was a small excerpt, I wasn't like 100% sure. I thought it was an interesting sound for like,
Right.
especially because I was used to listening to that sort of original, OG Superman theme by John Williams. But I think seeing it, when I went to see the movie and I heard sort of the complete track and like different elements of it, like throughout, I was like, this is it. This
Yeah.
is the new, this is the definitive Superman theme now for me.
It would be. I mean,
Yeah.
now that you're putting it, I mean, so how I've made the notes is basically what the track made me feel, and
Yeah.
since I knew what the tracks are for, or
Yeah.
like who they are for, so I could like relate some context, but
Yeah.
I've watched the movie
Yeah.
before writing notes, I've watched the movie in between writing the notes.
Yeah.
I've watched the movie before. I watched the movie when it came out.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
watched the movie a
Yeah.
lot, but I try to put these notes in perspective of what the sound is making, what the music is making me feel
Hmm.
with the character I know.
Yeah.
The character is being Superman
Yeah.
and aliens and
Yeah.
all of that. Looks to
The
the
whole
stars and
sci-fi
stuff
feel.
is
Yeah.
aliens anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
So
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's when Hans was sort of working on this score as well. So he sort of famously he didn't read the script, and he just
hmm
went to Zach, and Zach sort of
hmm
just pitched to him what the whole story arc is, like, and also like what the different scenes are. And he
right,
basically just went by Zach's pitch. Like he wasn't necessarily reading the script and seeing what's happening in a scene, at least originally. And I think from that pitch, he started sort of working on the different sounds and elements. And the sort of it's very interesting the type of instruments that are used in this album. So you have like your piano and violin and your sort of normal strings, but there's also like pedal steel guitar, which is like a new
yeah,
instrument. I hadn't heard of it much before. There's like something called like a sculptural percussion instrument,
okay,
which
hmm
is like it's basically like a sculpture. So there's this guy who makes these different sculptures that make different sounds. So like you hit them or like you drag something across it and it just makes those ambient noises, which are like very prominent in some of the tracks. And so the way I think
okay,
Hans went about it, and I was watching one of the interviews, he also wanted it to have sort of American instruments, at least partly featured in it. And I think pedal steel guitar are one of them, which are often underlooked. And they're basically like sliding guitars, but it's a very interesting instrument to look at. And that sort of that
okay.
sound, like that, there's this like in the tracks, especially in the main theme, you can hear like this guitar sound, like sliding. That's basically the pedal steel guitars.
I'll focus on that. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's
I might
very
not have focused on that
yeah.
one specifically, but like, yeah,
I think when
I've
we
got
go
a
through it
lot
track
of
by track, it
stuff
becomes more
of
evident. But I guess the point I was trying to
maybe, yeah.
get to is I was very surprised that a lot of the sounds that I thought were like just electronic sounds,
Uh-huh.
or from a synthesizer, they were actually from some sort of like organic instrument. And obviously there might there'll be some effects that go on top of it, but the original sound, a lot of that were just generated from instruments, right? Like one of the other things he did was like he created this like this drum orchestra, which is basically, I think he put some mics in the middle and he's got drummers to like surround it, which is like the bass you hear, because he
hmm
wanted it to feel like you got all these instruments like surrounding you. So I
hmm
think it was experimental in nature in the sense that he really sort of just went out there like Hans and he was like, let me just do the
So,
craziest thing.
are there instruments that he's used in these tracks for the first time?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. Like pedal
him
steel
using it
guitar,
for
the
the first.
sculptural stuff. Like he hadn't, to my knowledge, he wasn't very familiar with them before, or he hadn't.
Okay.
So one other example of that is he got all these people in with pedal steel guitars, and he thought he can sort of
hmm
conduct them, right? But when he got them all, he realized he can't conduct them because they look down when they're playing, so they can't see him. So that makes me
Right.
so like that's an indication that he hadn't done this sort of thing before. Like he'd done it in a experimental way. I mean, I guess going on a tangent a little bit, but I think Hans has said a few times like composers they tend to be lonely people. Like a lot of, I guess you can say for a lot of type of artists, right? But composers, especially movie composers, they tend to just work out of a basement sort of scenario with a bunch of instruments and things. But Hans always tries to make a community out of it. So he always has like live instrument players with him. The girl who sort of who plays the violin, she's, I don't have a name, but she, again, I think the violin she has, it's like 60 years old or something. Like it's lent out to different violinists. And right now it's hers. It's being loaned out by like some collector. So like he knows all of these artists and he brings them in. And
hmm
Junkie XL is actually one of them, right? He sort of collaborated on quite a few
Right.
tracks here. I know that
Yeah.
on disc 2, his name is actually explicitly mentioned. But my
hmm
guess would be that he was there for a lot of it because I think percussion, again, is one of the strong suits of Junkie XL.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very much a collaboration, but I think Hans really sort of, it wasn't just about him coming up with a theme. He just tried to do something very different, which is why I think this soundtrack, like if you take any like type of superhero action movie, I think this soundtrack still just stands out, right?
Any day.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'd give to stuff like Molossus,
Mm-hmm.
and a few other tracks.
Yeah.
Stay
Yeah.
from Interstellar,
Yeah.
Molossus from
Yeah.
Batman Begins,
Yeah. Yeah. But I
and
guess, yeah. So,
but I can name these tracks, and
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Time in
The ones that stood out.
Inception.
Yeah. No,
So
Interstellar
like,
was a great track
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
Interstellar, most of them were,
Yeah.
but that's again like I would dive into something like Man of Steel,
Yeah.
probably Interstellar as well. But then I've heard these songs over
Yeah.
and over because every song is so when I was discovering
Mm-hmm.
this, since we're like coming down to the tracks, it's when as I started making these notes, I felt like there's a string attached to all of them,
Yeah.
which is they're all exploratory
Yeah.
in the essence of it. Like
Yeah.
the way the music is surrounding you, like it's
Yeah.
forming this environment around you. But all of these tracks do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's also like every song has this portion of exploration in it,
Yeah.
like something unknown, something alien, something
Yeah. Very
big,
otherworldly sort of,
something
right?
otherworldly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I think it's very much, I guess, Hans and Zach sort of working together to like, create this sort of vision of what they wanted
Hmm.
out of this movie. And I think, 100% Hans sort of was on board in terms of when it comes to the soundtrack and how he sort of depicted it. I think, Hans said that, from the pitch that sort of Zach gave him about the movie and also like the story, he felt like, elements of like finding, where you belong. Because like, Hans, he doesn't have, he says like he doesn't have like a pure accent because like, he's like an
Hmm.
international person. Even his kids have a different accent from him. So like he related to aspects of that story, like cynicism of the modern world. And I guess having all of that context and relating to the story, I guess when you're working on the soundtrack, you can bring those elements in, which is why I think it just works so well.
Hmm.
Yeah, unless you have anything to add, we can sort of jump right into it.
Yeah, I think let's do it.
Yeah, so the first disc,
It's a
yeah,
long list. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, we are discussing the deluxe version of the album, which is 2 discs. So, the first
Hmm.
disc, disc one, is titled Flight. And the first track is Look to the Stars. So, this sort of, I think, it starts off with those sort of ambient sounds. And,
Hmm.
right off, even the movie, when you play it, right, it starts off with that. And I think it sort of sets the tone for what's to come. Right. Like in terms of what sort of sounds to expect, like it's not going to be a straightforward superhero soundtrack or movie for that
Hmm.
matter. So the first track on the album is titled Look to the Stars. And I think this track, it's I think a relatively shorter track, but it starts off with all these ambient sounds, and it really sort of sets the tone
Hmm.
in terms of like what's to come out of the later soundtracks and like that sci-fi element to them, right? With like those sort of almost like otherworldly sounds that are there in the track before like the strings
Yeah.
sort of start off. But it's a very interesting sort of first track for like a superhero film.
I don't know. So are these like listed in the order they are in the movie?
It's interesting because I think as we'll get down to the other tracks, we'll see because like some of the tracks are titled, and obviously story-wise that happens later. So I'm curious as to like what the order is that they've put it in. But watching the movie after listening to this album back to back, I think it is in the order in which the sounds or elements of the track appear, right?
Okay.
So not necessarily like they don't necessarily play the whole track, but
Okay,
I
yeah.
guess the element of that
Yeah,
track appears in that
they
order.
play only
But I
clips
could be
of
wrong. Yeah.
each track. That's true. I mean,
Yeah, like the
you don't
sound
you don't
editor
hear the
when
full track because you've got like dialogues in between and a lot of other
yeah.
stuff happening, sound effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but for Look to the Stars, like as the name goes, also because I mean that's what sort of drove my perception as well, and
Yeah.
so it's like something of a light, like coming through the horizon that you see, like I just
Yeah.
the classic Superman,
Visualize it.
the
Yeah.
classics with like and you'll
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
light coming up, and
Hmm.
I think yes, and then at around 2 minutes 5, like I think
Yeah.
just about there, you like see the sun coming up, and
Yeah.
then it sort of transforms into this journey which continues through the stars, and
Yeah.
there's like the music adds more mystical elements, like this, like the
Yeah.
tempo of the violin or the orchestra,
Yeah.
like they alter in between,
Yeah.
and there's this very uh strange sound. I think that's what you're saying, which is the drag thing, which is I mean, I don't know
So
how to explain it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's a
So
very small sound, but it goes like back forth, back forth, back
yeah.
forth, back forth, like that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that possibly could be that sculptural percussion instrument. I mean, there's some tracks where that is sort of more evident, which I've sort of pointed it out. But I think there is that presence, throughout all of these tracks of that, which sort of gives it that ambience that it has,
right.
or that environment that it sort of creates. But there's also I'd say like almost like an operatic feel to this track. It's very grand, right? Even
It
though
is
it
grand, yeah.
starts off very soft,
Softly,
like
yeah.
with those, yeah. But I think, yeah, it sort of really just sets the tone of what you've got
It
coming,
does.
or this style of
It
music.
does bring in a lot of the uh, sort of tunes that we are going to explore
Hmm.
as well. Like it has
Yeah,
not the tune, I would say, the essence of the tunes coming up.
yeah,
Yeah,
hmm
that's what it is.
yeah, and yeah. So and then from Look to the Stars, we get to Oil Rig. Now, I guess this sort of goes to your question, right? Because in the movie, obviously, the oil rig scene happens much later. But I guess, I think they used like the drums, the elements from it early on as well in the movie, which I guess is why it's listed like that. Could be wrong. But I don't know if you noticed this, but like at the 18-second mark, there's like this noise or like someone's voice on the left channel. Like I always hear that. Like,
In a few other song
yeah.
tracks, yeah.
No, but in this one, it's very much like if you just go exactly to that 18-second mark,
Okay.
it's like in the distant, and I almost feel like it feels like it's like something that's been accidentally left there. Like there's this, because it's not in the movie, and I saw that oil rig scene in the movie as well, unless like when it was used earlier on, there was some sound that was used which is part of the track. But it's a very sort of evident thing just in the left channel.
Okay.
But yeah, this is your sort of, I guess, your drum orchestra just going at it.
I mean, for me, like again, as I've felt through the song, so it's like
Yeah.
it starts with the strike of an accident, like
Hmm.
you're like thrown into the accident, and
Yeah.
then there's cavalry coming in with things like
Yeah.
falling around, and like there's this
Yeah.
savior. I obviously, as I said, like I saw this a lot, like from a perspective that it's about Superman. It's going to be about
Yeah.
Superman. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so there's a savior who comes in, and I think, yep. So the savior comes in at just the minute mark. So 1 minute
Yeah.
passes, and that's when the
Hmm.
savior music starts. The savior section of the
Yeah.
music starts, and
Yeah.
then there's like, there's the organ music, and
Yeah.
it culminates
Sort of the
from the
brass and
organ
all of
and
that.
from
Yeah.
the organ to the beats, and that's where it culminates. But the it's like oil rig sort of gets you hooked on right from the first, as I mentioned, the strike, the
Yeah.
accident, and then
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, something. I'm just saying, like, you can play out these tracks like small stories, or
Yeah.
something of that sort, and
Like
yeah,
each track has its own story it's telling that you can sort of, I guess, visualize from it.
or like however you
But I think,
proceed
yeah,
from it. Yeah.
yeah. But I think to that point, right, like up to that 1 minute mark, I think like the drums, like they really just like build that
Yeah.
tension. Like, you know that there's something tense happening without even any words.
Hmm.
And then as soon as that, you hit that 1 minute mark and you've got like the brass or whatever, like and it's like
Hmm.
it sort of changes the tone from like uh I guess like tense to like, I guess, more heroic, but
Hmm.
it's still very aggressive because like the drums are still like just right going with it. But again, it's an interesting track because the first part of it is just the drums,
Yeah.
which is also sort of a unique thing in itself, I'd say.
Drums add to the tension, which sort of make it seem like, because it's oil rig, so Superman, oil
Yeah,
rig, you can connect the dots,
yeah,
and that's how I sort of saw it or
hmm,
visualized it. But,
yeah. No, yeah, and then we get to Sent Here for a Reason. And I think, this is one of the ones, going back to that sculptural, percussive like instrument. You can hear it more clearly, like especially I think it's like at the 45-second mark.
Mhm.
You just hear that like dragging, sort of vibrating ambient sound. And, and you've got like all of that, and you've got all that like sci-fi, I guess, ambience. And then you've got the piano with it, which it's such an interesting combination. And I guess that piano, which is again played so delicately, mixed with that sci-fi sound, it just creates to me that is like Man of Steel. That's the movie which sort of, it combines, I guess, these more like spiritual, almost like finding your purpose, that sort of elements, with like just hardcore sci-fi.
Yeah. That, I mean,
Right?
Sent Here for a Reason is very.
Yeah.
I think it's very Man of Steel like. I
Exactly
mean,
right.
not to
Hmm.
just like be a fanboy of it, but like it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, Man of Steel is basically just that. Like he is throughout searching for that reason to stay, for that
Yeah.
reason to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And well, this is the track, and it. So as I've written that it starts very lightly, and then I saw, well, I see visuals of like someone walking about in search from a distance, like you can see that someone, and then you
Hmm.
cut to the shot behind the person, with the like with what he's searching for in front of him, with like the heavy organs which come into the track when they
Yeah.
do.
I guess they're like strings or something, right? Like with when you got that hopeful, uplifting part of the music
Well, they're not. Is
element
that
that
not
that sort
organ?
of
Is
kicks
is
in.
that the are those strings?
I, I, I I think it could be brass as well, because there's a mixture. I feel like depending which point you're at, because like
Right.
I think you get from what I could hear, like closer to the 2 minute mark, you get the strings, and then you get like some sort of brass section as well with the piano,
So the
which
piano.
itself is
So
just
and then
yeah,
the piano again while, and yeah, yeah, I think the piano adds to the search part of it. Like the the piano added to the search, like what the person was searching for, and then the person finally coming to it, and then um, it's like exploring what they found, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
were searching for something, they found that something.
yeah,
The music
yeah,
is taking these sections, right? So
yeah, yeah.
then they're exploring what they found, and
Hmm. Yeah,
um,
or discovering it.
then
Yeah,
discovering it, and
yeah,
it's like then it ends on a mysterious fantasy element with like like a muffled choir. There was a muffled choir at the end of
yeah, yeah, yeah. You should make like a short movie out of this.
it. Of all the tracks.
Yeah, each track its own little animated thing. But yeah, I think it's again. I guess to me what also stands out is like this unique combination of like the sci-fi sound,
Mhm.
as you could call it, or like that alien or spooky sound that you have,
Yeah,
and then that hopeful, uplifting music like married with it. It's like a different type of like genre by itself in terms of music. It's like that superhero music combined with like something like Blade Runner, some sort of sci-fi uh, uh,
yeah,
sort of environment,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
What would I add? Some other movie. I think uh, coming back to the introductory part of it, that this is basically taking on from the original Superman movies. I mean, it's
Hmm.
like you like carrying on the flame, and that I think this captures the, but it doesn't copy it, but it captures the the original uh, the so
I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
over here is basically something like
Yeah,
that is what is like, I mean, that's,
yeah.
but
It's much more subtle.
uh, I think so. Over there it was outright Superman, right? So it worked.
Hmm.
Over here it's this introvert as Superman trying to do
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like stuff is big for him, or he's
It's
look
more like introspective.
he's more
Yeah,
introspective, so that works, and
yeah.
that's how the sound sort of, I can bridge the two together. Like both
Hmm.
are for Superman. Both have that
Yeah,
glorious feeling to
yeah.
it. Yeah,
The
yeah.
heroic, uplifting aspect. Yeah. And the next track is DNA. So this is the one where I think the pedal steel guitar that I was talking
Yeah.
about is sort of more evident. Like when you hear it, that sort of sliding guitar sound.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean it's interesting track because there's a lot of like as you listen to it by itself, there's a lot of like tonal shifts in the track, right? Like when you're nearing the 1 minute mark, like the 50-second mark, like the tone shifts, with the percussion and like the fast-paced strings, and then at like the 1 minute 20-second mark, again, like the tone of the track changes, and again at the 2 minute 10-second mark. So like throughout the track, it's like there's a lot happening, and there's these like almost U-turns the track takes throughout.
So what was the timestamp you said?
So the first was like the 50-second
Yeah,
mark,
yeah.
where yeah, then the 1 minute 20-second, and then the 2 minute 10-second.
Okay,
Those are the ones that I noted down.
okay. I've just so the music, I've sort of the same thing.
Yeah,
It's like the music kept transitioning from sections,
yeah,
and
yeah,
with a climax, as well as the
mm-hmm,
the exploratory music that I was saying, and
mm-hmm,
then it's like uh, it's like a it's like a journey to achieve it all. Like, that's
Yeah.
your journey. Like, or the music felt so as it transitions. And um around 2:30 there's like this
Yeah.
um like a Kryptonian ship sound, I think, or something,
Interesting. Yeah.
whatever the sound he uses for
Yeah.
the, well, the what seems to be like, those big ass world engines coming out and stuff, like whatever it
Oh,
is.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what comes in.
Mhm.
And that's true. Like, it DNA has these sections of different
Yeah.
different feelings of music.
Hmm. Yeah, and no, I think, and it very much is like throughout the movie as well. Like when you're watching the movie, the soundtrack, it has these like hard
Hmm.
transitions between the scenes. But yeah, I think that track DNA really captures it because like it happens multiple times while it's like the same track.
And it's
Yeah,
a
it's
short
interesting.
track as well, DNA.
Yeah, yeah, and then from DNA we get to "Goodbye, My Son." And this track also has Stephen Lipson, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, credited.
Okay.
I think he's sort of like a sound engineer sort of person, producer. Um, but yeah, this to me is one of the more major tracks, and I guess what I mean by that is it's so this is played in that scene with Lara, right? And it's the vocals are almost like a lullaby,
Hmm.
like if you imagine this is the lullaby she would sing to young cow,
Yeah.
which is basically what this track is. And if you think about it, the way that lullaby or that this track is sort of positioned, the rest of the Superman theme sort of derives from this. So like you could say that the Superman theme is actually just based off that sort of lullaby, which is what Lara would sing, sort of thing. Because like that sound they have, because it's you see like that
And it
young
goes
cow
higher as well.
just
Like,
lying.
the note goes higher
Yeah,
of the humming sound, the lullaby that you're talking about.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that, like, the notes, yes, the notes go higher, then they go back down, and it's similar to
Yeah. It's
um
like you're putting a kid to sleep,
similar to
and so
This
it
Is
just
Clark
works
Kent.
so well.
So
Yeah.
it's basically the C and F in Microsoft. Like, those
Yeah. So
notes
yeah,
and
but
those
it's
notes match,
yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the theme is sort of derived out of this almost, it feels
Maybe.
like something that his mom hums. No, I mean, I don't think it is. I guess this is just a track they created, but I'm just thinking thematically, like where they position this theme.
Hmm.
Because like before this in the movie, you don't really hear this. You hear elements of it, like in "Look to the Stars," but you don't get the full-fledged theme till much later on.
Hmm.
But this lullaby, I think, really just sets the theme, the sort of scene for like how that theme is going to sound. And I think they use it for Lara in this movie. In BVS, they use it for Martha, but it works like just as well. I think that mother.
But
So
yeah, I mean, what I saw was, it's like, as you mentioned, the first minute was soft, and it just, I'm saying without context of the movie, like, it really felt like a mother singing for the son. And, like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that sort of, along with the exploratory sounds from Look to the Stars, it also entails this sadness,
Yeah.
of the goodbye, right?
Hmm.
Alien, but goodbye.
Yeah. No, it's very beautifully done. Again, like it's I guess Hans really putting thought into like because a lot of times in the movie the purpose of the soundtrack is to like get things across that are not said,
Hmm.
and Zach
Yeah.
in his movies anyway he uses like minimal dialogue generally. There's not a lot of dialogue in his movies. People are quite like very quiet. and things are either visually indicated, but in this case also like audibly you get that feeling of what's going through like those people right there.
I think this plays out right when Lara says, "Make a better world than ours." And
Hmm.
like boom.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, beautiful. I think beautiful track.
Sure.
Really, like Hans just outdoing himself. um, yeah, and then we get to "If You Love These People." Sorry.
I was just saying, it's a sweet track, Goodbye My Son. It's very sweetly done, and
Yeah,
yeah, love in it.
yeah, sweet lullaby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next track is "If You Love These People." Um,
Love these people so much you
Then
can mourn for them.
so obviously the title of the track is from more like the climax of the movie. But this is also like a very interesting track. So like for me, and this is something I always noticed when I was watching the movie, especially that scene where like Superman sort of just flying and punching Zod uh, in in air, and the soundtrack at that point to me it really reminds me of the Lion King's soundtrack. And I'm not kidding. If you actually like play it, obviously that was also done by Hans, but there's like elements of like it's not the same, but like the notes and the way they are, it really just reminds you of, like especially in Lion King when there's that scene where he takes some drugs and he sees his dad, his dead father.
the Rafiki, yeah. I mean, the hippie gives
The
him
Rafiki gives him some,
problems.
yeah. Rafiki, yeah, gives him some
Pills.
some stuff, and he sees, and again you hear it's in Lion King quite a lot, but to me, and I guess going on that tangent, the reason I guess this movie as well connects so well is there's some like evergreen storytelling elements or like mythological elements that are there in other stories as well. And like in Lion King, like if you take like Mufasa to be Jor-El, Scar to be Zod, Simba to be Cal, it's a similar type story, like Zod killing Jor-El, Simba embracing his destiny as the one true king, although like the first half of the movie he's just
Scar
looking for
is
his purpose. Yeah. So to me that scene, and when you got this "If You Love These People" track playing, and I can almost hear that Lion King track in the background, like it really just brings back to me like that sort of parallel of Lion King and and Man of Steel.
the track is very action packed, like from around the 35-second mark, and
Yeah.
the music keeps intensifying with like layers of the electric guitar and beats, and then there's like an orchestra, then there's just more
Yeah.
more elements that keep adding through the tempo, and then I think the music leaves you at this juncture of
Yeah.
which of if, like
Hmm.
that the feeling the music gives, like given the
Yeah.
name of the track, if you love these people. So
Hmm.
like you've got the question, if do you love these people, and then you've got the answer that I
Yeah.
do, and like,
Hmm.
like
Don't do this!
Yeah. The next snap. And like the music at that next snap
like
like part is just like
so
fire. Yeah.
that's what, like, the music also leaves you, if you just listen to the music, music leaves you at this
Hmm.
juncture of uh, you know
Hmm.
if like you're just still choosing sides,
Yeah.
so, and then the music just stops right there, like this abrupt
Yeah.
pop rock
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
music.
Sort of climax. Yeah. And then I guess after that, there's like a couple seconds of just like, again, those like ambient
Yeah.
sounds, right, in the track, like after that snap.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
I mean, it's again,
A
if you
very,
love
very
these
heavy
people,
track.
I remember the movie, so I could not see it any other way, and
Yeah.
it makes sense the way, and this is how it
Yeah.
makes sense. Is That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the next track, Krypton's Last, I mean, it feels like it almost sort of carries on where the previous track left off. Because it has like the same ambient sound that it had at the ending. This one has, in the beginning. But yeah, this one features that amazing like violin section. And I was telling you about, right, that violin player and that violin being like, I don't know, 60 years old or something.
Yeah.
But you can, hear like, there's like a sadness to the sound, again, similar to the Goodbye My Son lullaby part, right?
It's
the violin in this.
What I've
this
written
one.
is it's farewell music.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And you can sort of very much sort of hear that sort of, it's like screaming in a sense, the violin, the way it's played, like it's trying to say something. And it just sounds so amazing. Like you can't do that without a real violin, just like with synth sounds and stuff. Like you need that instrument's character in there. And I think this track sort of really brings that out. But it does have like a tonal shift. I think at the 1 minute 28 second mark, again, the track does make a bit of a sort of a turn, right?
Yeah, the orchestra comes back. I mean, like you come back with the whole.
Yeah, you got the percussion. Yeah, I mean this type of like aggressive music as well that they've got like toward the second half, and throughout the soundtracks, it works really well as well with like the the shaky handheld camera style used in Man of Steel, because like every time you hear you see it zoom in, at the same time you hear the drums go, so like it just really captures that turbulence, right? There's a lot of turbulence in the music. And it goes with like Superman flying through the wind, but as well as that like handheld camera style, the way that the music is put together, right? Yeah, and then the next track we have is Terraforming. This one is sort of almost, I guess, 10 minutes long. And, it's got I guess it's got a different type of rhythm from the other tracks in terms of sort of like the rhythm of the percussion, the percussive instruments. But it's got that same like theme overlaid on it. So it's like an interesting, again, a different version of that theme, right?
If I read I can read all that I've written.
Sorry?
I've written a lot of things for it, apparently. It's like,
yeah.
So I'm going in order of the track. So construction, so as I see it, construction work scenes going on from the beginning until you see the alien ships. And then, it's still building up to it. And then you add more and more layers of instruments, and also there is the sound of a man on a radio, kind of, in I think before the 150 mark.
Interesting.
I don't know. There was this sound that I couldn't figure out. Like it didn't sound like an instrument. It sounded like someone on the radio, but very muffled. And it made a connection sense that alien transmitters are trying to contact you, maybe, or something like that. And then
interesting. I mean, for me, like at that 1 minute 50 mark, 1 minute 52 seconds, one thing I noted down for that part was like it sounds like it's the same sort of like that Superman theme, right? But it's much more like militaristic sounding, like it's almost like a war song. And I think again it works well given the context of what's happening. Firstly Zod, and also General Swanwick, and they're coming up with the plan and everything. But it takes that same sort of like Superman theme and it just makes it like more precise and more like a war song or like a militaristic
So
tune,
that's
right?
at 150 people realizing
Yeah.
or seeing the problem, and it's around 2:30 that they're figuring it out as
Yeah.
they observe this problem with these climatic sounds. And climatic sounds, I mean, like there's sounded something like thunder, and there's more like
Yeah.
And I think at about 3:20, it's they're able to
Yeah.
figure out what to do, and then like Soup's doing his thing, and
Yeah.
so this whole thing entails in the music, because I'm not
Yeah.
like I'm
This
just
whole
not
journey.
like drawing power. I don't know where the music was used. Obviously I remember the dialogues and I remember the scenes, but like
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was used there, because it could be that. But for example, a few tracks over here, because this is the deluxe. Yes, and then we've got so the problem. So the problem comes in front at about 4:45, which then switches from the evil terraforming and hero moments. Like the music is shuffling in between these two.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a, I think, like in the track as well, right? It sort of goes back and forth between like the Superman theme and then like the Zod version of that theme. Right, it is like that sort of back and forth that's happening.
That's
in sort of the later part of the track.
Yes. And the last 2 minutes 30 seconds, it's like the hero is only pushing forward to put an end to this as it gets to the boss level difficult fight. And then again,
which is actually, I think, the part at the 8 minute 55 second, right, when it's like in the movie when he sort of flies up to like destroys the world engine, like he looks up and he flies up that beam of light or whatever. One of my favorite scenes, but the music at that part, because it like slows down and then there's like that whole sort of like choir or that orchestra as well, and it's just goosebumps,
and
right?
And then you get like a VFX Henry Cavill in Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve in Henry Cavill.
Yeah. That wasn't on purpose, you know that, right?
Oh, that wasn't.
Like when someone pointed out to Zach, he was like, "Oh, I didn't actually realize that." It was a happy coincidence, as far as I know.
Okay.
Because he really does look like Christopher Reeve in that part with like the
for a
air
second
blowing.
or 2 seconds, but it's there. It's definitely
there's like
there.
A couple of frames.
It's definitely there.
Yeah. And also like again, this track heavily features the world engine sound, and I think this holds true for a lot of tracks we'll see later on as well. Like when watching the movie, so I assumed that's just the sound effects. It's not really part of the soundtrack. But it's surprising how many of those like sound effects here are actually part of the actual soundtrack, like the world engine. It's just, it's so unique sounding and it pierces, right? And it is sort of featured in this, I think, in this track.
It is. I mean, it's terraforming.
It's featured a few times with Zod as well. That world engine sound, like a couple of times even before in the movie. It's not the world engine, but it's in the soundtrack. And I think that world engine sound, the second use of it is just like a cue for Zod.
Okay.
Like oftentimes when he says something or he declares, there's like that, like just in the background, there's that world engine sound. Right. But yeah, it's a very sort of, again, it's a long track. There's a lot happening.
Track, it ends on a soft, but like it's one soft chord. Terraforming ends on this really soft one chord is what I remember. Like, it's suddenly stopped and it's okay, kind of.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, that's the feeling of the chord. That one last chord where it ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think amazing track. And then from Terraforming we get to Tornado. And I think this track and this scene in the movie just sort of breaks my heart because it's just just that scene of him just standing there with his hand up is so powerful.
It's very powerful.
It's
and
this,
Clark not going there to save him, like
yeah. And the track itself, it uses like you got the percussion, right, and like the strings, and they build up and then they like a crescendo, and then then it's like free fall, and then it's build up and then it's free fall, and it's very much like if you're visualizing like a tornado and things flying around. Like, I think the music, again, just with the percussions, it really captures that element of it, that tense and that intensity, and then that free fall of like you're going through this like roller coaster ride, like as it's building up, and then the piano when his father like sacrifices himself, Jonathan Kent, it just hits so hard. Like after all of that build up and all of that intense music, you just got that piano at the ending.
Yeah, I don't know. Tornado started off with like a deadly march vibe to it. Like it's a deadly march coming, like deadly.
Yeah.
Well, what do I say? I mean, like marching towards you. But with that death sound. And it's got then it's got the one, like, so there are beats like like 1 2 1 2 1, it's on repeat, and that adds in with the violin and the drum and like those instruments combined together, and then it's around the 140 mark where the tragedy of this march and that wiped away at 205. Like 140 it starts and 205 is where the tragedy ends, and then we are with the theme of Clark Kent. Like that's where it ends, and it's like that theme of Clark is played like at a very very low tempo, and it just invoked this feeling of loss. Like it has this feeling of loss in it, that like the slower it goes, the more thoughtful and the more emotional it is, and that's what I felt from Tornado. And plus, of course, I know what happened, so it made a lot of sense.
No, it's very hard to separate this one out of that scene of just like his dad, and Clark just looking at him and then screaming. It's really well done. I mean, there's like 3 moments in the movie where Clark sort of screams. There's like when he's born, right? Then there's this scene, and then there's right at the end after the neck snap.
Yeah, neck snap.
Right. But it works, like it's so brilliantly done with the music. So then we get to You Die or I Do.
Only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do.
Yeah. So, this one sort of starts off, I think, much more like sinister, like sounding, the tracks, right? And then you've got that hard, like militaristic percussion sort of.
It's rather got
playing.
this like slowly setting up stage for a duel.
Yeah.
Like that's how the music is building up.
But this I think the starting, and then especially like when when the brass sort of that heavy sound hits, it very much is like in favor of Zod. Like this is very much like Zod's zone. And then you also got like the world engine sound coming in, but then I think more towards the end you start getting that back and forth again of like the Superman theme and then the Zod theme, which is again that dual sort of feeling, right?
So right at 129, like this stage that's setting up till 129, and right at 129, like you just sort of dive into this fight, and then there's like it's the villain's time to action, then it's Soup's time to action, then villain's time, then Soup's time to climax, and then those Man of Steel horns, as I would say. It ends with like one death.
So it's like the soundtracks are really just they're very well complementing what's happening on screen or what's being set up or even what's coming afterwards, right? It's very much hinting on all of that in the background, and I think it all works when you're watching the movie and you're listening the score. There's so much more that's gone into the score than just like, oh, it's going to be a catchy theme or it sounds like a Superman theme. Like different ways the same theme is played throughout, or different elements of it brought out in each different track, I think, right? It really sets this album apart.
True.
True. Yeah. So, and then we get to launch. And I think, this also sort of starts off with that more, I'd say, like sinister sort of sound, right? And also like the way that you have the percussion, right? And I mean, it's an interesting track. Like you've got quite a few different things happening. Like at the 1 minute 43 second, like you got that full strength of music, like when it hits. Then you got like the world engine sound. Then you also got that lullaby sound of like "Goodbye, My Son" at like the 2 minute 10 second mark overlaid on top. And so again, I think it's a very good example of like, I guess, the music transitioning and reflecting of what might be happening on screen or like what the characters are going through.
So I actually imagine this one a little differently than what's shown in the movie. It's like I could see like beauty shots of this launching device, and those beauty shots, like slow cam and details and lights and stuff, and there's then it felt like a ceremonial act in between the like with the horns, the Man of Steel horns, and then at 1:45, as you mentioned, like the launch is prepared and done, and then the song or the track ends with the classic mother parent in pain music, like it was before. And I mean that's just the zones that the track took me through.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess again trying to place it, I'm not quite sure again the order that the tracks are in, like how well that's reflected in the movie. It'll be interesting to like watch the movie and really try and pick out which track is used here, where, right?
Like I thought of doing that, but then I rather thought like explore it as music, like explore what the artist is trying to say than what Zach is showing you. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So that.
No, that's true. And then from launch we get to ignition. I guess ignition is it the shortest track, or it's probably one of the shortest tracks?
To
I'd
me,
say,
it
right?
felt literally like the second part of launch. Like it's launch and ignition go together. Like that's how it felt.
Yeah,
and it's got the same feeling,
and it is
quite similar to what launch was.
Yeah.
There's no other way to define it really. It's just just the ignition.
No, that's true. And it's got that, again, percussion sort of heavy intro. But yeah, it is that fairly short, like very fast paced short snippet. And yeah, then we get to I will find
I
him.
will find
I will
him.
find him.
I will find him!
Man, like Michael Shannon's like delivery of that line, like he is one of my favorite like movie villains, like from this movie. Right, like there's that purity to his Zod, where it's not like he's thinking or he's double-minded about something. He's very single-minded. He knows what he wants and he goes after it. He's very sure of it.
I mean, that's how he was.
And yeah, I
made
mean this
to
one,
save Krypton. And that's all. Yeah.
And this has that again, the world engine sound in it, this track. And again, I think that is one of the scenes, I think, when he's saying I will find him and all that, you hear that world engine, that cue so early on in the movie. So that's what I mean. Like they use that world engine sound.
They're not going up in wood. Like,
No, they go up, they get frozen, and then, they get put in those little capsules or whatever, and they fly up. But that's not what the sound is for. It's like every time there's like a Zod moment, they sort of subtly use that world engine sound as like a cue. Firstly, of what's to come, but also it's just musically that world engine sound is intermixed with what Zod is, or like that.
I think it's more
he's
like
just as fierce
like
of a force.
That's the threat. Huh?
Yeah. And it's Zod. Like I think the other part of it is like he's no less than the world engine. Like he's just as fierce of a force of nature, right? That's how you've got that world. He is the world engine, right? So it's very much, I think it gives Zod the grandeur of like a villain. And I mean, the other interesting part of this I will find him as well is like how you hear aspects of what is the Superman theme, but it's sort of again twisted and adapted to Zod's theme. Like they have similar origins, but it's sort of holding up a mirror to like the Superman theme, right? There's an element of that.
Yeah, that plays out a Tata had. Yeah. Because my doubt was that what should I differentiate between but the origins are the same. That's why the themes are the same. But but that's the dark guy coming out of the same origin. This is the suits guy coming out of the same origin. So that makes sense. But for I will find him, it's like the track is like this introduction of a pursuit, and then it sort of explores that as I mentioned, like the music. A lot of it is exploratory, so like it explores and evolves further into that pursuit of I will find him.
Yeah,
and then including like him gathering his armada and trying to locate Cal and stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then we get to again one of my favorites. This is Clark Kent. And so this is one of the tracks that also Hans was somewhere he said like he was tweaking it like right up till the end. Like he kept like moving the notes around or just like slightly adjusting it, here and there. And then the sound editor, I don't know, the sound editor or someone like they commented, like, can we have a version of the edit where like the sound doesn't change from like each cut? But yeah, I mean, he was constantly tweaking it, but it very much is, again, it's so delicately put together. While the other tracks, they have more of like the Superman theme. It's up front and center, that heroic, loud sound. I think this is like almost like a spiritual counterpart of that, like the Clark Kent version. It's so much softer and delicate. Like, again, this is one of the tracks where I think there's almost like no percussion, at least in the first half. Like, it's just, you got some background ambience, some sound, and then you got the piano, and then you get a bit of like light percussion. And I think what they like in the previous tracks, when you hear the drums, they're just being they're being played with like drumsticks, right? They're being hit hard. While in this, like at the 2 minute 24 second, when you hear like the drums played, they're like being played by hand. I don't know if you can notice in the sound. It's like, and the way they're being played is so beautiful. Like, there's multiple beats, like you can hear the different fingers hit the drum pads with like the piano. And again, the piano at that point, it sounds like bells, right? Like something you'd hear in a temple or something, right? It's just so, there's this, and the drums as well, right? This spiritual feeling to it, I think.
Ceremonial, right?
Yeah. This is Clark Kent. And then it ends with like the loud piano chord and the sort of louder drums. But that 2 minute 24 second, like at that time when you got the piano and just those drums being played by hand, it's so delicate. Again, like Hans found another way to like iterate that Superman theme, convert it into, I guess, the Clark Kent theme. Right.
Yeah, because it uses the same two notes, like he's playing with two notes, like one after the other, rather than chords in Kent theme and the Superman theme. And for me, this was like, it's first of all, just I mean, I love this track, and it's like a perfect background for childhood memories, and it's just generically apt for such themes, and along with that,
there's an innocence to it.
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, correct. And the music kind of matures in the last minute of it, with the notes like going on the lower octave. Like, it's the same notes, so it's the same guy, but it's on the lower octaves. Like, it's the sound is more mature, more like more bass in the sound, and more character to the character. And then it's like it also faces, like, the character is facing adversities while building himself. Like, this whole theme of This Is Clark Kent, it literally shows you this is Clark Kent. Like, this is the kid. This is the kid with the. I don't know. It's a very it's a creative shot, so never mind. But like, Clark standing there with a red cape behind him when there is no Superman to look up to. Like, you are the Superman, and you're the kid at the time, and you've got the scene with the red cape where he's like standing with his arms, with the dog in the shot, and then those clothes hanging by, and there's like wind. He's wearing a red cape. I guess it's just a creative shot, but like, This Is Clark Kent really holds all of the personality traits of Clark together.
Yeah, it's very much captured it. And I think, again, like the movie being about Clark trying to find his purpose, there's like a spiritual aspect to that, finding that purpose, and why was I sent here? Why am I here? And I think, again, this track really captures that aspect. True. Well, the other tracks might focus on the action and the superheroics. Like, this is just that raw, like, search, this journey that he's on.
True. I mean, I love This Is Clark Kent, first of all, and I think this is one of the songs, one of my first attempts to learning the keyboard. This was the song to go to. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just 2 notes, so it's easy.
But
No, but in the beginning as well, right? When they do
I
that,
mean,
the piano is like almost discovering the
it's
theme.
very
Yeah,
interestingly done since, I mean,
yeah,
I'm trying to master like some tunes, but um,
yeah,
like it's very interestingly done just because it's paced the way it's paced, and you can pace it slower
hmm,
as we went through, like
yeah,
like pace it slower so it's sadness pace, or something
yeah,
like introspective, but you pace it faster. It sort of evolves in
yeah,
itself. It's some few notes which would be good either which way or anywhere you place them on the
hmm,
tempo scale. But yeah,
hmm,
I think I just love it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it's very you can very easily
Yeah.
get lost in it. Um, yeah, and then we get to I have so many questions. Now this track again, I think brings it back to that more alien sci-fi
Mhm.
sound. That we had, I guess, layered with like a few notes from that like more, Superman
Mhm.
theme. But this also like features like in one of my favorites, that lullaby section at like, I guess like the 2-minute 28-second mark. I think it's
Okay.
there, where you hear that sort of humming again, and then the violin slowly kicks in, and again like there's a sadness to the
Mhm.
track, and there's like the way that the violin is played, and it really pierces. But overall, like this track, I think it really just creates that eerie sort of feeling, or like that this combination of sort of very alien and sci-fi sounding music with like a lullaby and a violin, and especially the ending of this track. I think it just really evokes, like, I have so many questions about this track.
So uh,
Right.
this track, like, it starts off with these sounds which like create this sort of mysterious suspenseful kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then like the music goes like you are processing a lot of thoughts, like
Yeah.
as you go into the music and you listen. It's I think it's a violin
Mm.
thing, and
Yeah.
that's like as you would mention it, since you're already in this, since the music, a lot of this music is atmospheric, and you're already in
Yeah.
that space, so you also see this,
Mm.
that you just those the violin notes are the notes of your thoughts, is what I pictured it as. So
Mm-hmm.
like you just like scattered all over. You're thinking this, you're thinking that, you're trying to grab this, trying to grab that, and it's like a background music in your head, and then it all merges together, and then it you know the layers add more instrument, and the instruments also start intensifying themselves in terms of
Mm-hmm.
going on the lower scales, basically. Like it it kind
Yeah.
of just keeps on building that uh, curiosity, that it keeps on building that build up. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
that's uh, like it's got that sound. I don't know if I can't make you remember it like that, but I don't know. There's this sound. If you remember it, and you get this context, like you would completely picture it the same way. I'll, I'll, I'll do it after this.
I don't know which sound are you talking about?
I I think it's the violin, but those are like really
Yeah.
fast. Like those notes are very fast,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
in
Yeah. I see
this
what you mean. Yeah.
atmospheric
Yeah.
music in itself, that
Mm-hmm.
those notes stand out, and those notes are what I'm saying, representing thoughts. And then you like, your brain is just scattered here and there, and you're like calculating, and just figuring stuff out, and it's just coming together.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions.
Having so many questions.
So many questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get to flight. I guess one of the main tracks on the album, in the sense, I guess one of the more popular ones even. And I guess this is really for me, like, it sounds like it's like the Superman theme in the making, because there's like, it's building up to that Superman theme, as like, when he comes out, and then like, as he's jumping, again, you got the pedal steel guitar, and the way it's timed in that scene, it's like you hear that pedal steel guitar, like that slide, and then you see him jump, right? So again, it really captures the sound that Hans was going for. Like, when you're just listening to the track, you can imagine something like jumping and trying to fly, or
that's
like
what the
shooting across.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay, like I can picture that, and with the sound, yes.
Yeah, like the shooting sort of, right? And and it really is. I think it's like the culmination, but it's sort of building that Superman theme, because again, you've got elements of like the Clark Kent theme in there. There's the lullaby overlay as well at like the 2-minute 15-second mark, and then I think around the 3-minute mark is when the theme just hits hard. I guess that's the point where he just jumps up, right, when he flies. When he actually starts flying, and you've got the Superman theme just playing. So it sort of builds up to it, and it's like flight. It tries to take off a few times, and then it finally like takes off, and you get the rest of the track.
Yep. Also, there's this section where he's like breaking through the barriers, and the music does that too, like without the sound effects. And so I don't know if that's like timed to the Man of Steel sound breaking, but there are the booms, the sonic booms. Yeah.
It didn't soundtrack. It's like you can hear that sonic boom almost.
But flight, from like what I felt was like it's a quest, and it's like layered over each time. He's trying for another. And each time he's trying for another, like the music layers over each other. The first attempt he makes, it has probably, I think, 2 instruments or 3, and then they start intensifying and layering over each other as he goes further into his flight. Yeah. And as you said, like in the end, it's like you hear the full track once he's like actually flying out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, you're talking about that full track at the end, we get into what are you going to do when you're not saving the world? And I think, to me, this track is the, like, Superman theme. Like, I think this track is much more, like, distinctively sure of being the Superman theme as something opposed to, like, Flight. Where it was more like the earlier Superman. Like, this really just feels like this is it. This is the main theme. And yeah, I mean, it sort of combines like the louder, more heroic music with there's more quieter parts, of almost like the Clark Kent theme. And it really just paints this picture of this is this Superman.
I think so. Exactly to what you're saying. It like I think artfully collects bits from Clark Kent's theme, and then like the Superman's exploration theme, which is the first flight, and then like combining these aspects of his life that have just spread out in the cinema. They're all together over here with his innocence, his heroism, his mysticism, and more stuff like that. Like since this is the last track of the first disc, So it's like
No, last track of the first disc. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Oh well, the original soundtrack without the deluxe version.
yeah, and so this just collected like these bits of Clark's life that have been already. I mean, it's been done already. Like you've heard these before, but these are these bits that have been put together in a harmonious way.
Yeah, and I mean, this is really the track at which the movie ends, right? When you get like the title credit, like the Man of Steel, right at the end, and you hear the theme take off. So like, really, the origin story building up to
glad to be here,
that's
Louis.
Superman, because he's wearing his glasses, he's Clark Kent as well, and so I think this track is like the Superman theme of the movie, right? And now we get to disc 2, which is only in the deluxe version of this album. And this is titled Experiments from the Fortress of Solitude. Interesting title. And, we start this disc off with Man of Steel, Hans' original sketchbook. And, this is essentially his whole demo, that he created for the movie. And, the rest of the tracks are just sort of excerpts from it and then rebuilt into a track. But this is like, it's a rare thing to be able to see, the original sort of sketchbook or the original demo that a composer or an artist has come up with, right? Like this is the original soundscape.
But that's what about Man of Steel, right?
Yeah.
It's the director's cut. So
yeah.
Like you just kind of get the premium stuff along with it. Yeah.
The composer's cut of the track almost. But yeah, I mean, like for me, I guess the main thing in this track, I mean, there's differences and you can see some creative processes behind of like how a track was, transitioned into another. And I think that really there's something unique about that. And listening to this, you really appreciate how like he uses that same underlying sort of theme or like a thematic element, and he builds out all the tracks and all the sounds are derived from it with so many different types and varieties of instruments and like musical styles.
It's like Hans' original sketchbook was the big bang for the
creating all this track. Soundtrack, right?
Yeah. This whole universe of stuff.
I've had like when I first sort of had my hands on the deluxe version, like I'd used to just put this sketchbook just on repeat, just it just ends, starts again, and it's just continuous because it keeps transitioning.
So the first 10 minutes of it felt a lot like we're seeking something.
Yeah.
And then we meet Clark. Yeah. And then Clark sets on his journey as we follow. Mm-hmm. And at about 11-minute mark, it feels a lot like it feels a lot alien with Clark's theme, but a more mysterious sound to it.
Mm-hmm. And at about 14 minutes, there's this marching in the music. Then there's, so as I was mentioning before, to explain the violin sound better, it's like a glitchy, futuristic sound. Mm-hmm. It's and then at 15:20, because it's a 28-minute track.
Yeah.
And it's a full journey, and at 15:20 we see him right in the hero moment of flight. Mm-hmm. That's when the flight part comes into the sketchbook. And then there's this, that he's flying higher and higher than his normal flight, when I think at the the flight also has this intensifying layers to it. So even this one has that, but it just feels like he goes higher than normal. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
like
Reaching new heights.
he's flying
Yeah.
higher than normally he
Yeah.
does. And then around 24 minutes, it's like this atmospheric chants
Mm-hmm.
that are there,
Yeah.
which, like a god amongst men kind of feeling to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And because right after it starts with a hero tune,
Yeah.
and and at 26 minutes, like, it has the villain arising music,
Mm-hmm.
which follows like a fight towards the culmination of the track at the
Yeah.
28th.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. The
there's
track
like,
itself, I think, goes through like that hero's journey sort of
yeah, I mean, this is
arc.
the journey I
Yeah.
perceived from it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously you can plus minus the story
Yeah.
plot lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, that
No,
was
very, very well put.
Hans' original sketchbook. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad, like, if for nothing, like, just having that in the deluxe version, at least getting to see that creative process a little bit of what the original sounded like and what he came up with. All right. Yeah. And then, so we then get to Are You Listening, Clark? And I guess, this is the music that sort of plays, when he falls in the water, and then we get that classroom flashback.
Yeah.
And again, I was surprised, the amount of sound effects, or what you think are just sound effects in the movie, they're actually embedded in that track, right? It's like you can just sort of feel his senses going like haywire, or it's like a panic attack, like everything coming through at once. But it's all like part of the music, like with the whispers. And it's like the track is just created like that, like the scene is being described and Hans is like, all right, I'm gonna put this here, all right, now this is happening, and it's very visual in that way.
So that's what I've put, like, it's got like
Yeah.
these echoes from the past sounds,
Yeah.
like right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it's like something extraterrestrial reaching out
Yeah.
for someone on Earth, maybe. And
Yeah.
so that makes sense for this, again, since
Yeah.
I know the movie. It makes sense for the mother reaching out to the alien, and
Well, then you got the
that
piano,
line.
right? When the piano kicks in, like, focus on my
Ends
voice.
with the
Pretend
Clark's
it's an
theme.
island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ends on the Clark's theme with that same two notes.
Yeah. I mean, I think this track, it really sort of also, I think in a way, embodies what I guess Clark's childhood would have been like, right? Like in between discovering his powers, like being afraid of them, and then like, Martha like teaching him how to like, I guess, control or accept them. There's that anxiety and that panic in the music, in the sound effects, and then it gets to that piano, that calm, meditative like piano theme.
Yeah. Which is
Right.
Clark's theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to the general Zod theme. Which actually Junkie XL is credited to as well. And I guess, you take that Superman theme and I guess, I spoke about it before as well in the other tracks. Hans, he really just adapts that Superman theme into that Zod, like militaristic, methodical sounding track, where everything is like very precise, whilst Superman's theme, it sounds more organic. And you got that like sinister sounding, like there's a brass section, and you again got the world engine sounds acting as like the Zod's cue. Like almost makes me wonder whether like Hans just came up with the world engine sound for like Zod, and then it ended up being molded into the world engine sound. But very much, yeah, this is that general Zod theme, right?
I think you put it quite well, saying that it's more, more military based, like the theme.
Yeah.
This is basically Superman, but it's more military based. It's like more
Yeah.
organized and more
Like you can imagine people marching to it, for example, right?
exactly that, and
Right.
following it maybe. And
Yeah.
well, for me, it started off something like that. Well, since it's like, as I could see,
Yeah.
Zod like searching or finding out about Superman or
Mm-hmm.
Cal, and 3 minutes
Yeah.
later into the music, like we're now onto the battleground,
Yeah.
and then the score gives a feeling of how
Mm-hmm.
it is when a well, yeah, that's what it is, a gladiator match,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It feels
Mm.
like a gladiator match going to start,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it is a gladiator, like those two
Mm.
coming together, that collision
Mm-hmm.
happening, and that's like the whole gladiator match. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, I think it ends with this sort of iconic, um, the mourn
It's
for them music.
yeah, the
Yeah.
last third of like the track is more mellow, like it's string based, a bit more mellow, right? Like the
It
yeah.
felt like a fit for the you can mourn for them, and then like
Yeah, if you love these people.
and then
And I think
I
because
think
this is
they
yeah.
can probably like mix match the two, if you love these people and this.
Well, I think that most of the track, like, and I think we'll get to it more as we go in, but in this disc two, the tracks,
Hmm.
I think apart from I guess the one we were just discussing, like, are you listening, Clark? Like, I think General Zod, for example, I don't think it's featured as a whole track, but there's elements from it that are featured, and I think
Right.
elements from it made it into the "If You Love These People" track, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Because remember,
Yeah.
like this disc is called Experiments from the Fortress of Solitude. So it's all the extra stuff or
Okay.
things that either they didn't include it in the original track or it
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily as a whole thing in the movie almost, right?
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then you get to another sort of Zod track, You Led Us Here.
Hmm.
And, this one takes that eerie sort of music in the other tracks with like the piano overlaid. But again, it's tweaked according to Zod, right?
I see, like, I only see like a big ship
Yeah.
coming in front of,
An
well,
iceberg, Titanic.
ocean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's also like, there's also
Mm,
this sound from a diluted
mm,
ship, which is
yeah.
kind of the world engine sound. Like,
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
ship
Yeah.
sound, but it's not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, then it adds like an introduction to a new race with the choir. I felt
Hmm.
like there's a choir in it, in You Led Us
Hmm.
Here, and
Yeah.
then it ends on this complete question, which, because most of these tracks ended like softly, they're
Hmm.
like heading towards the end, but
Yeah.
this one is like, it just complete question, like it ends on the beat, like one of the tracks before also
Yeah.
just ended on a beat, like leaves you with that,
It's a cliffhanger,
yeah,
sort of,
just
right?
leaves you with that impact, like
Yeah.
you led us here, that's it.
Hmm. Yeah. And then we get to another sort of Zod sort of track. This is Madness. And the Junkie XL again is credited to this song.
Mhm.
And I guess this is basically, it takes that terraforming track rhythm, but it changes out what that percussion sort of what the drums sound like.
Mhm.
But it's basically just a drum solo sort of track, right? It's just drums. And I think going back to that point I was initially making about the collaboration with Junkie XL, I think even on the other tracks, I guess it could be that Junkie XL sort of helped out with that percussive
Mhm.
sound they have.
Mhm.
Um, because he's more sort of, he's got from what I know, he has a bigger background in percussion than sort of Hans. So I think that's what he brought out. And this track is basically just the drums, just that drum orchestra, whatever you want to call it, and that sort of terraforming rhythm. Like, I could have never thought like a superhero movie has a full track, which is just drums. A Superman movie at that.
I mean, it makes for me, it was like charging towards something in, like building up, and then you once you built up, like you start running, like the gates open, like flooding towards you, and then the beats go like it felt like a kick punch kind of beat, like the beats go in that kind of way. And then 2 minutes after, it's like there's this silence between the madness when it starts again. Like, so
there's like a standstill moment.
Like you've probably knocked them down or something, but then there they come again. So that's how it happens. And it kind of feels like madness, that what goes around comes around. And just it just doesn't leave you, like it's just heading towards you, just aiming for you, running towards you, however you want to like see it. But I mean, you're right, like it starts with those beats and it's mostly only those drums and stuff, but
it's just
it's just
going all out
madness.
It is madness. No, but it's amazing like how much you can achieve just with like percussive instruments, or just like with the drums, right? Sort of drums, like the different emotions they can create and the tension and all of that.
True.
Yeah, brilliant. And then we get to, so, I've on a lot of the other tracks I kept saying, oh, this is one of my favorite tracks. But for me, Earth is my favorite track of this whole album. And I think, basically it's just like a more, I guess, like a meditative version of the This Is Clark Kent theme. And I don't think this is used in the movie. It's because it is, again, in that experimental side.
I don't think it
and
is.
And I think if I had to imagine, I'd imagine this is probably an alternate take on the This Is Clark Kent theme. Like Hans said, he was tweaking it right to the end. I feel like this is a contender for like a alternate version of that Clark Kent theme. But like the string sound with like the background with the bass.
I got a very Tanpura feeling to the.
Yeah, it has that, right? That spiritual, like in This Is Clark Kent, it takes that Superman theme, makes it spiritual, but this is like all out, meditative.
It's also got those unplugged songs kind of guitar into it.
Yeah. And like, I'm not sure if it's like at points in the song, I can't tell if it's like piano or it's some other like string instrument, but you hear it in the background, like playing the melody.
A string instrument.
Yeah.
I think the one playing the Clark's theme in this were electric string instruments, I think. I think
could be, yeah. And I mean, it's a nice, I guess, twist or a nice spin on the Clark Kent theme, right? I mean, there's the, at the 3-minute 40-second mark, it's just riffing on the sound. It's not even like trying to go anywhere. It's just like, let's just create.
For 3 minutes 40 seconds, there's a new feeling. Like connecting it felt like Clark in his years now is grasping the idea of bridging two worlds. Like that's what it felt like. And then the electric guitar really, like it adds that beautiful planet kind of theme.
Yeah.
Like there are those sections in Earth which are used in like these documentaries and these, I mean, the really good documentaries like the Blue Planet and stuff.
Oh, I see what you mean, like that sort of sound,
like
right?
Those morning sounds or scenic sounds kind of thing. Like they just sort of,
I mean, this whole track is very like
Earth feeling.
Yeah, organic, right? Like this whole track feels very organic in that sense. Like it's got that feel to it, and it basically, takes that Clark Kent theme, makes it more organic, more like down to earth.
Yeah.
Even at the 4-minute 22-second mark, it sort of twists that Superman theme a little bit into something a bit more beautiful even. This track is just, I could listen to this on repeat all day. It's like my absolute favorite of this whole album. This is why when we were initially deciding, I was like, we need to do the deluxe version.
But
Initially, I couldn't remember
this
if it was in the original one or not. And then later when I checked, I was like, oh, this is only in the deluxe version. That's when I texted you, like, we have to do the deluxe version.
So it's like, the Earth,
Yeah.
it ends, like, so it's got this electric guitar that, has the Clark's tune playing, but it
Yeah.
ends on these 4 or 5 notes on the guitar, which felt very similar, a similar ending to like a blues song or like a normal song, like a generic song is what I'm saying. Like it had that feeling to it. Right?
Yeah.
That the guitar had that feeling, or I don't know, it's that electric. It felt unplugged, like one of the unplugged sessions as we have. So those kind of
like a live
sounds.
unplugged version, sort of. Yeah, and then I guess in Earth it's all sort of calm and meditative and spiritual, and then I guess you make a bit of a U-turn into Arcade. And I think, again, Junkie XL is credited on this track, and I think there's elements of this track as well throughout the album, like with Zod's sort of, whenever you have Zod's theme or you have a Zod-centric track. But I mean, to me, I think it really just feels like an extension of Zod's theme, right? The track Arcade.
I think Arcade is more like Zod's army. Like going against Zod's army first, coming together, and then it's like the fleet coming towards Soups, and at 1:30 into the song, they're like, you realize that these people who are coming around, because then it very smoothly transitions from Clark to, like, you get to know these are Clark's enemies through the tune, through the music itself. And then like I think there's sound effects also in Arcade. Right. And the world engine sounds and all that is started, and that
there's a lot of like
it's Soup's battle now, like it's Superman's. He just got to battle this out, and it's that level of threat that's coming up, and then it ends softly with, I don't know, there are these sounds like wind cutting through in Arcade, like towards the end. I didn't understand what that was.
Like, what is that making the sound?
Like, I mean, well, I more than the instrument, I'd like to know, like, what purpose was it serving, in the sense that unless I
think it's to create the environment. I mean, that sort of sound, I think, to me, it's like it's almost, it's music, but then it's a more like like a sound effect being used in a scene, right? And I mean, it could also be because elements of, like I'm saying, I think elements of this track are used in the movie, like, and even in other tracks. So I think it's like a mishmash that we're getting, right, when you're actually watching the movie. Right?
I mean, and I mean, it makes sense here and there. Like, all the tracks sort of make sense because, I mean, you hear only parts of it throughout the movie. You can't hear all of it. But they make sense.
Well, it's almost like you have the Hans sketchwork, and then you have this album, and then I guess then you use this album to then create what we see in the movie, right? Like elements of the tracks scattered throughout.
So Hans sketchbook is like the Big Bang.
This whole album is the Hans sketchbook in a way.
True.
Right. But yeah, I mean, there you have it. The whole Man of Steel deluxe version. It's a journey. It takes you through, and I think like overall, it's hard to put it into words, but the movie, and it goes both for the movie and the soundtrack. It's almost like, Zach and Hans had this either like understanding or disagreement. Like the way it's approached, it's very simple. Like it's humble and simple. Like at the same time, it is complex. Like you've got so many different instruments. Like you got that drum choir, you got the pedal steel guitar, the sculptural percussive instruments. But it's still humble in the sense it very much stays true to what it's trying to do. Like you've got that core Superman theme and you have different aspects to it, but it's not overcrowded with like a lot of different sounds, or it's not overcrowded with just like, loud brass or horns playing just different tracks. It's very sort of simple. Like even the piano, like this is Clark Kent at the core of it. It's very simple. And the movie, Man of Steel itself, at the core of it, it's just following Clark. It's not trying to do, it's not trying to necessarily like wow the person watching. Like
minimalistic score.
In a sense, right? Because it's not minimalistic in the sense of like the way the instruments are used or the number of instruments used and the number of sounds coming together.
Even Man of Steel, if you see it, it's quite a minimalistic frame, like mainly minimalistically framed movie.
Yeah, it's just following Clark.
Two characters, three characters, two characters.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how it is.
And so it's almost like Hans and Zach had this like understanding of like their take and their approach to this Man of Steel, and they both did it that's why this complements each other so well. Both the music, it's very rarely that they both just seamlessly fit in and enhance the experience. Like the sum is greater than the parts.
So much, yeah. True.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd conclude the album with my favorites being leaving out Flight and leaving out This Is Clark Kent. I really like Hans Zimmer's schedule.
Which is basically the whole album. In pieces.
What can I say? I tried to filter it out, but that's the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so all the songs, if you actually notice, it's essentially, as you mentioned, like the minimalist part of it. Like it's essentially the same tune, or the same beats, the same notes. But as we explored in the Rahman one, that how harmony, like just the harmony can change so much while an instrument is trying to say something, like that this is the main instrument, this is what it has to be focused on, but changing the harmony changes the whole perception of, or the idea of that. So that's what Zimmer did in this so flawlessly, that it's the same tune, because I mean Clark's tune is also Superman's tune, is also Zod's tune, is also part of Terraforming, is also part of Look to the Stars. Everything's got that essence of one. So,
which is sort of again evident in the sketchbook, right? Like you can see how seamlessly they all just draw from a theme or a idea, and that idea is sort of used to. It's not like a mishmash of different ideas. It's one idea, and then you just grow it and you give it time and you give it space. And same for the movie, right? The Man of Steel
evolution and exploration. I think that's what I would say. Evolution
always wins.
Is what this whole album is about.
Yeah.
The whole movie is also about
I think this whole movie and the soundtrack is such a unique take. And I think, given that we had the Christopher Reeve Superman, the John Williams score and so much before, this is just, I think for me at least, a breath of fresh air, just a completely new different take, both like the movie, the soundtrack, the storyline. It was just so fresh that it's difficult not to like want to go and rewatch it and like try and at least capture that experience of like the first time when you saw it, right? That breath of fresh air, and it just gets better with time, with age. Good wine.
Like good wine. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you're still here, I hope it's because you're awake and listening and not because you're falling asleep. And we will see you again shortly.
Yeah. Cheers.
And this is one of the tracks that Junkie XL is credited on. And basically, I guess this is, you take the Superman theme, you kind of make it militaristic, more like methodical. I'll say that line again. So again, like you...
Yeah.
And I mean, this is, I guess, basically, you take the Superman theme, you make it more methodical, more militaristic, and it's basically... Now, this is one of the tracks that actually Junkie XL is credited on. And, it really just takes that Superman theme and it, like, adapts it, right? To sound like a war song, like something that's... And then we get to the general Zod theme,